Hola gente de YouTube, aquí estamos en una video reacción de... Pues ya están viendo la pantalla, ¿no? Nah, no es broma, yo les explico. Es de un video de ahí de 2015, 16. No sé, me vale verga de cuándo haya sido. El pedo es que lo vamos a video reaccionar para ver si es tan aterrador como todo el mundo dice. Es la primera vez que lo veo, así que bueno, vamos a ver. Está subtitulado en español, ¿sale? Empezamos así, ok. Los subtítulos son de Sorban, güey. Rey. Se los voy a dejar el canal en la descripción. A ver, aquí está la intro de la serie clásica de 1984, creo. Es del 80. No sé. Se me olvida las fechas. Ahí va Thomas. Con Annie Clarabel ahí llevando pasajeros, me imagino. Y aquí, pues ahí está todo igual, nomás que feo. Según en el presente, o sea, ahorita. Vaya, cómo inventan, ¿verdad? Muy bien. Aquí va. Es la introducción de la serie, de hecho. Parece. Y aquí está todo ya con grafito, todo destruido, ya valiendo verga. Ay, qué bonito, ¿eh? La asombran. Aquí está Thomas. Ah, vergas. Pero creo que esa la promotora no es de Reino Unido, creo que esa es de Estados Unidos, ¿no? Sí, porque esto está re grande y los de Reino Unido pues no son así. Estos son monstruos. Mira. Miren los detalles, parece como del Reino Unido. Aunque bueno, no hay que juzgar tanto. Este video tuvo trabajo porque no es. Por si no lo saben, mis video reacciones no son críticas, son video reacciones nomás. Bueno, vamos a ver. Está toda oxidada,
They
pero.
were the stories that have charmed an entire generation.
¿En
From
serio?
the books to the television series, people around the world have grown up with the railway stories, and all their cheerful characters. But the truth behind Thomas and his friends was no
Ajá.
children's fantasy. The truth would be horrifying.
A ver, para que no haya entendido, según que van a decir la verdad detrás de la serie de Reino Unido, Thomas y sus amigos. Según en el video así dice, vamos a ver. Aquí está fuera de un colorcito que dice Set 17. Ok. Está todo normal, todo tranquilo. Nada fuera de lo ordinario.
It is 1945, and the remote island of Sodor, off the northwest coast of England, has emerged from the fog of World War II, relatively unscathed and untouched.
The island served as a detention camp for Germans living in England.
Ajá.
That's how Professor came to be here.
Professor Wilhelm Goethe was born in 1903 in Munich, Germany.
Ajá.
A doctor in biology, he
Todo
became a
normal.
prominent advisor to the ruling party in the 30s.
Wenn älteren Jahrgänge noch bangen werden könnten. Die Jugend ist unfassbar.
Ahí está Hitler y que están diciendo lo de la Alemania y todo lo que pasó en la vida real de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, creo. Vamos a ver.
In 1939, as war escalated, he, his wife Olga, and 4-year-old son Hans fled the country.
Ok.
Tja, ich habe nie einen solchen Befehl bekommen. Ihr habt einmal gefragt, nicht wahr?
Ah, no
Am
puso subtítulos,
14.
qué
Mai
gacho.
1942 war der Großadmiral Räder und ich bei ihm.
That's what he wanted people to believe. The fact is, his experiments were hard to stomach even for his own people.
In truth, he had become a prominent figure in the government, but as his work
Ah, trabajar
progressed,
con Hitler a la
questions
vez.
and objections had been raised in the higher echelons of the Reich. His work with genetics and DNA was truly pioneering, the cracking and manipulating of the human genome. What Professor Goetze was most successful in, however, was keeping his history a secret until his death. In an attempt to gain favour among the German hierarchy, Wilhelm Goetze was at the forefront of the government's most fanatical policies. In 1938, he was influential in instigating the infamous Sajmelnacht, the night weight of sawdust. But, as his experiments advanced, he became a much less popular figure, and soon feared for his and his
Gente, perdón si no hablo mucho, es que tengo que poner atención porque estos videos son de temática así turbia. Tengo que poner atención para entenderlo y después explicarles. Así que si no hablo mucho, pues ahí perdón.
family's lives.
As soon as they escaped to England, he was banged up here. But the locals were nice to him. There was no hostility, and many of them chose to live here after the war.
Following their release, Professor Goetze, Olga, and young Hans chose to remain. After studying under his father, Hans left at the age of 18 and went to university on the mainland, studying biology and engineering, writing several pioneering papers about genetics and the splicing of DNA with mechanical implants. He called it biofusion, the technique of manipulating genetic material to splice with mechanical attachments. However, much like his father, the British government became more and more concerned with Hans Goetze's proposals.
Pues hasta lo que entiendo es que pues el Hans, ese vato, se escapó y que toda la verga, y después que estaba haciendo sus experimentos de la biofusión y que quería hacer experimentos con humanos y con las máquinas, que al parecer al gobierno y a su padre les empezaba a preocupar. Bueno, hasta yo me preocuparía porque, tío, van a hacer experimentos con humanos, ¿qué pedo? Vamos a seguirle.
So he was forced to seek financial backing from home.
His dad left Germany with quite a few bob, so Hans came back. He saw our little island as some sort of refuge where he could work in peace. Soon every nutcase and eccentric was coming over.
By 1962, Hans had set up Sodor Research, a small lab near the town of Alsborough, but soon the enterprise began supplying medical equipment and machinery, and quickly grew to become a large complex
mira, ya hay vías,
comprising
ahí
its own
pasaba el
links to the
Thomas
growing
en sus
Sodor rail
tiempos.
system.
Young Abby Collins from the town was working there when Professor Hans took a liking to her. Soon they were married, and not long after, the town was buzzing with news of her pregnancy.
Baby Thomas was born in 1968.
A ver. Al parecer el vato que quería hacer experimentos en humanos se casó y luego pues hicieron lo que se tiene que hacer para tener hijos, se embarazó. Y ese es Thomas, o sea que Thomas antes era un niño. ¿Qué pedo? Sí se parece. Bueno, a lo mejor nomás agarraron la cara del tren de Thomas de la serie y se la pegaron ahí. Sabe cómo. A seguirle pues.
Throughout the early years of his life, he would watch the growing railway network with fascination.
He couldn't get enough of trains. His dad bought him one of the first video cameras, and he'd be on the platforms every day. You can see me in some of those tapes.
Hi, Mr. Hartley.
Morning, Thomas. But he was friends with everyone, even that simple bloke who could only say where he lived.
Sodor.
But his favourite trains were the old steam engines.
Steam engines were a dying art on
Pues aquí nos muestra que Thomas, que Thomas el niño ese rarito, se la llevaba bien con casi todo el perro mundo, así como la locomotora de la serie. Y entonces sus trenes favoritos eran los de vapor. Personalmente a mí también me gustan los de vapor, me gustan más los de vapor que diésel. Muy bien, vamos a seguir.
the British mainland, but Hans also had a fondness for them, much like his son, and liked to keep them running for our purposes, taking orders from the labs to the growing docks, or to the mainland to be transferred to modern postal express trains. But as the Sodor rail system expanded, it found itself increasingly under the supervision of the new British rail network and appointed a new controller.
Mira. El Sir Topanhat. Sí, lo dije bien, Sir Topan. Sí, lo dije bien. A ver.
Sir Topham Hatt. Born into money, he took his ridiculous name to heart and started wearing a top hat all the time. Of course, the islanders had a different name for him.
Fat bastard. You've never met such a cold-hearted
¿qué le
as
dicen
him.
así? A ver.
Banned all steam engine volunteers and cut most of rail employees. Shut down the branch line and the smaller stations. He was happy to let the railway rust away, just like they did to the main line.
But the fortunes of the railway were about to take a profitable turn. A stroke of luck for the island.
La tragedia
from tragedy.
.43. Pues al parecer nos introducen a Cierto Panhat. Que aquí pues parece ser el villano. Porque Cierto Panhat no es tan así, tan mamón. Y no le gustaba el dinero. Él amaba los ferrocarriles. Así que bueno, vamos a seguir viendo. No puedo decir mucho aquí. Según la historia, parece que la historia apenas va a comenzar.
What's the time?
A ver.
Get moving.
Young Thomas loved following railway. He'd be out all time, hoping to catch a new train on his camera.
11:45's coming through soon.
He won't wait for us.
Unfortunately, he didn't take as much notice of the safety signs.
I'm not being late again.
Have we missed it yet? Wait for the 11:45.
Never mind the 11:45.
Azul.
It must be late again.
Tommy, come on.
It's always held up.
Pero es que me dio risa el tren. Me dio risa el tren. Venía un chinga. Parecía que le metieron como 50 litros de diésel.
Mind the 11:45.
It must be late again.
Tommy, come on.
It's always held up.
No mames. Iba más rápido que Sonic a la verga. Iba más rápido que el Sonic. Aquí se ve un bracito del Tomás. Ahí verás, se murió el vato. Por pendejo.
Hans was mortified. He disappeared from public view and into his labs. Locking himself in, he wouldn't allow anyone in there. Eventually his father Wilhelm came to see him. In a few days, a major laboratory had been locked down, followed by an engine maintenance shed, which was to become off limits to all. All production was shut down, orders weren't met, but the two Professor Goetzes didn't care. More and more equipment was being delivered daily, but no one was allowed in Shed 17. Questions started being asked on Sodor. Where were the Goetzes? Would there be no funeral for young Thomas? And where was the body?
They'd arranged for Thomas to be transferred to a mainland hospital. He'd been taken to
Pues al parecer Tomás murió y todo el mundo estaba así como que ¡ah! Se murió el niño, no mames. Ah, chinga su madre. Y pues quién sabe dónde chingado se lo llevó. Pero habían llevado al complejo, pero nunca lo trasladaron entre todos. Asumimos, lo vio todos. Todavía estaba en el laboratorio. Pero sí, Tomás todavía estaba ¿qué? Estaba morido.
the complex, but was never moved by rail. We all assumed the obvious. He was still in the lab.
But if Thomas was there, was he still alive?
Todavía estaba
And
vivo.
what was the
¿verdad?
purpose of keeping him at the complex? Almost a year after the accident,
Un año,
the doors of
un
Sodor
año, ¿qué
research
pedo?
were reopened. In an open invitation
Ah,
to
su
the
mecha,
people
el
of the island,
tomatitos.
Thomas rolled out of
El
Shed
tomate
17.
azul.
Took me a moment to realise what it was I was looking at. When he looked at me and said,
Hiya, Mr. Hartley.
it dawned on me what Hans
Qué
Goetz and his
bonito.
dad had done. One woman passed out as Thomas smiled at us. I had to run off around the side of the shed.
Are you alright, Keith? There's news.
Qué gracioso. Al parecer, pues los experimentos de la biofusión y todo ese pedo, pues al parecer lo hicieron con Thomas. Fue el prototipo. A ver.
Spread across the country, the world's media rushed to Sodor Island.
They kept trying to interview me. I became a bit of a celebrity.
Controversy on Sodor Island. Questions asked about
Ah.
science ethics.
It's fair to say I was pretty nervous at times,
Joined now by Keith Hartley.
but I think I put on a brave
Sodor
face.
Island. What did you think when you first came to meet Thomas the Tank Engine?
Ah, se vomitó el vato otra vez.
Most of my mates said I looked pretty good on telly. The mayor said I'd represented the people of Sodor
Chale.
very well. It's important to show you're confident when people are asking you awkward questions.
Good evening. In act of mercy,
or a crime against humanity. I enjoy now by
Even when some of the questions got difficult, I made sure I knew what I was talking about.
What was your reaction when you first met a talking tank engine?
¿Qué pedo?
If you can't make an informed opinion, or if you can't string together two words on telly, well, maybe you shouldn't be on there.
There are two sides to this.
Admittedly,
We've
the
read
subject
one.
matter was a bit bizarre sometimes.
There are some dark forces at
Hay
work.
algunas fuerzas oscuras.
You were alright as long as you could win over the audience.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
The Goetze family refused to answer any questions. Behind closed doors, the only question they agreed to answer had been asked repeatedly. Would Thomas work on the railway? The response was an emphatic no. Thomas's DNA had been reprogrammed to accept and adapt to the engine structure, using the engine's internal system to maintain his organic functions. What no one could be sure of was how much of the engine was mechanical and how much was organic material. Thomas had been able to move around without coaches, but to work on the railway, his engine would need to be fired up and operated by a driver and fireman. Since no one could be sure how much of the engine was Thomas, the pressure caused by the engine could rupture his organs from the inside, and the incredible heat could boil him alive. Professor Hans and his father vowed Thomas would never work on the railways. Similarly, the two professors were to refuse many requests by people from around the world who wished to be biofused into engines.
There were billionaires offering to pay whatever they wanted to be converted into an engine or some other transport. Train enthusiasts too, and people with terminal illnesses were desperate to be made into trains.
Sale
But for
mucha
some
gente.
reason, the Goetzes refused.
Pues al parecer mucha gente quería convertirse en una locomotora o otro transporte. O sea, depende de lo que quieran. Pero pues se tenían que negar porque nomás lo hicieron con Thomas. No querían dinero ni nada. Puro millonario y entusiasta de los trenes. Y también gente que allá andaba moribunda por ahí. Vamos a seguirle. Ay. Oh, mami. Ahí está.
But there would be other interested parties, eager to seize on the biofusion gold mine. The independently wealthy Topham Hatt staged a hostile takeover, and within weeks had bought a controlling share in Sodor Research. Immediately, the policy of the company changed, and so did the ethics. The medical supply wing was shut down, and work began on mass biofusion experiments and operations. Anyone who could afford it, some handing over their whole fortunes, were turned into engines. But, along with the new policy, there would be worse to come. Biofused engines would be allowed, then obliged, to work on the railways.
The first one we fired up was James. He didn't have the money some of these people had, and so agreed to basically sign his life away if they wanted to experiment further, or to take massive risks like
Vale,
this.
ya empezaron a
As usual, the factory had everything recorded. All kept classified, you understand.
These recordings, shown for the first time, reveal the extent of Sir Topham Hatt's experiments.
It was horrible watching these engines work on the railways some days. But the tourists wanted to see it. They expected it. And for me, it was work.
But, with the new engine's increasing work schedule, came more and more accidents.
Edward was first to have problems. He'd been filming all day for the new
mira,
TV
la nueva
series
serie de
they'd
tele.
announced. And for his last scene, he had to pull into Wellsworth Station and whistle to the kids on the platform.
Whistled Edward. Thank you very much.
¡A su mecha! Ya se murió ya se murió el Edward. Chale. Ringo, pipi. Ni modo, ya se murió el
Sadly,
Edward.
this was only the first in an increasing number of incidents. Harold had an obsession with aircraft and had paid to become a helicopter. The operation had gone well, but we had to ban him from being allowed to attempt flight. in an experiment kept secret until now.
Ahora
Mavis the diesel
Mavis, a la
engine was to be the
bestia.
first biofused
Al parecer van a
locomotive
salir
used on
casi
the
todos los
railway.
trenes, por eso dura como
Fueled
media
it
hora.
up and everything seemed fine. Then things got out of hand.
The diesel began to burn her internal organs. Everything organic in the engine was soon burning.
Have you ever heard a locomotive scream in
Oh,
pain?
se muere.
We tried rinsing out the
Ah,
fuel tank with
super.
water.
Ya se murió la
By then it
Mavis.
was too late.
Mavis's body would be kept under lock and key indefinitely. In an unexpected U-turn, Sir Topham Hatt would ban fueled engines from
Se
being
murió.
used on the island. Harold was never told why he couldn't fly, but the decision would keep him alive, if only for a little while longer. In fact, unknown to the outside world, there had been many failed biofusion experiments.
That fat bastard kept the accidents a secret, and legal disclaimers had to be signed by anyone being biofused. So there'd be no legal action taken if anything went wrong.
This footage shows engines being displayed to tourists during the
Ah,
off-season.
mira.
Many of these
La serie
engines
de
were failed
TV.
biofusion experiments and were too ill to
Me da
work
tanta
or were
nostalgia.
already dead. They had to put a stop to that, though.
Ah, mira, murió el Percy.
With all accidents happen,
Pues, según lo que escuché por ahí, el contexto es que la gente pensó que Percy no había sobrevivido a la fusión esa. Y lo dejaron ahí como pieza de exhibición, ahí nomás como de museo. Pero en realidad sí sobrevivió. Y un día pues no aguantó más y murió así.
then everyone started asking the same thing. Why had Thomas, the first engine, worked so well?
Despite all the troubles the other engines had, Thomas had worked fine, seemingly oblivious to the other engines' problems and accidents. Keeping
Qué
their
raro,
problems
¿verdad?
a secret
Que
from the
nomás
outside
Thomas
world,
funcionó.
Sodor Research began selling the technology to other countries in multi-million-pound deals. These countries would have less qualms about the use of fuel engines and even the modern electric trains. Even failed biofused engines were being displayed publicly in what would become a kind of freak show. To his horror, Professor Hans Goetze saw what this was leading to, slavery of engines, and immediately resigned. His father,
recreaciones.
Wilhelm, would go one step further.
Están escuchando una musiquita. Se suicide, aún tiene mucho que vivir. No.
Professor Wilhelm couldn't come to terms with what was happening to his engines, and took the only course he thought he could take.
¿Por qué se está quemando?
That fat got a load of us rail staff over to his house to clean up after the body was taken away. You should have seen it.
Porque hacer
Sawdust
ring,
everywhere.
están hechos de madera,
It took us
los monos de
days.
ahí, ¿o qué?
But such attempts to keep the incidents on Sodor a secret were short-lived after a very public accident.
Gordon paid an enormous amount to be Sawdor's first 462 configuration engine, much bigger than any other engine at the time. We were terrified that fat shite would make us fire up that huge engine.
We were shocked to discover he had insisted on being able to work on the railway. So, one night after the regular staff had finished for the day, fat some of the rail staff
ahí
and
está
I
Gordon.
fired up the engine.
Qué bonito,
As
les
usual,
quedó. Nah,
these
sí,
experiments
bien
were
culero.
filmed. This footage has never been broadcast before.
Dr. Ruth and I filmed it all.
It might be a bit shaky. It was handheld. At first, Gordon complained about the heat.
Se queja
Then
todo el
that
vato.
turned to pleas to douse the fire.
But the fat bastard held us back. He wanted to see what would happen.
He argued he had put a lot of work into Gordon, and the chances to get him working were too great an opportunity. He was literally cooking from the inside. By the time we were allowed to act, it was too late.
Está muy exagerado
I
esto.
wasn't as
Esta
near
muerte
to him
está
as some of
exagerada.
them. All I could do was run. I was lucky to get away with some singed clothes. Others weren't so lucky.
The fateful few hours following the accident would seal the fate of Sodor Research. The fat stopped us trying to put out the fire, insisting that any evidence would fall back on us.
He kept repeating, "This was all your fault. You knew the dangers. You're legally to blame." He stopped us calling for ambulances or the fire brigade.
No,
We
se murió
told him,
gordo.
these are injured people here. They're going to die unless we do something. But he kept saying, no one from the outside can come in. No one can see this.
Finally, someone suggested
Pues al parecer todos los experimentos salían mal. Y Sir Topanhat, pues él decía, oh cabrón, si algo pasa, recaerá entre ustedes. O sea, sí, así era de mamón el vato.
we airlift them to hospital. Harold was banned from flying for his own safety, but we thought the risk was worth it.
Fueling Harold was a nervous experience. Would he have the same reaction Mavis had?
We all breathed a sigh of relief and loaded the injured people aboard. Then it all went wrong.
¡Vuelan! ¡Sí! Esto. Mira, se le dice 3 años. ¡Puta! ¡Pum!
Harold's engine had worked fine. But
Pero,
what no one realized
a ver,
was most of Harold's lower
estaban
extremities
funcionando.
were permanently fused to his propeller system. As Harold's rotor
Cuando
blades
las-
began to spin,
Ah.
vital organs would be drawn into the motor and tear him apart from the
O sea, se murió
inside.
por dentro el guato. El
Well,
guato.
now
El
there was
vato.
no covering it up. The smoke could be seen all morning, but news people were here in an instant. We were told to close gates and start clearing up the mess ourselves, with some help.
Henry Thierry was the only 420
Ah.
gauge engine on the island.
Henry.
A large engine that had been working on the railway regularly, he had become popular among tourists and the locals. Henry was called into the yard to help tidy the mess. Working mostly at night, he would cart away the wreckage under cover of darkness.
We had to work quickly and quietly. Henry would cart wreckage from the yard away to the sea. Then one night, the points were set wrong and we were diverted to another shed.
Henry had inadvertently been sent to shed number 17, where Thomas had been biofused into a tank engine and had subsequently been declared out of bounds.
It was dark and these sheds all looked the same. I unlocked the doors and Henry rolled in. I didn't see what Henry saw, because as soon as he put his head through the
Tell
doors,
Henry.
he bolted and reversed out.
Keith locked the shed up without seeing what was inside. But Henry had seen it all.
We wouldn't even dare talk about that shed, more than our job's worth.
But
Chale.
Henry had decided to speak up and confront Sir Topham Hatt. That night, he arrived at the railway controller's office.
I don't know what was said in there, but there were raised voices at times. They had a shouting match for 10 minutes. Then Henry left, back to the shed.
Ah, no mames.
By pure chance, he was sent back to the same shed as Thomas that night, and with one sentence, he sealed both their fates.
Henry only said one thing to him: stay away from shed 17.
Ah,
The next day, the fat had a new job for him.
ah,
The
mira,
flying
la gente.
keeper route
Ah, el
runs through
escocés
the
volador.
night,
Digo, el escocés
delivering
volador.
fish from the docks to
El
the
pez
mainland,
volador.
across the highest altitude line in the country.
That whole line was treacherous at best, but when Henry was put on there, in the middle of winter, it was a death trap.
In 1970, fish had started being delivered by road to the mainland. It was safer and more cost-effective, and the line was declared redundant. Dangerous and unnecessary, it came as a shock to the islanders when it was reopened.
That fat shite always hated Henry. He didn't like his cheerful manner, and he clearly had other lifestyle choices when he was a human.
Pobre
Haunted
Henry.
away from the other engines, and Kipper Rum was a death sentence.
On the night of February the
Ah, fue una
8th,
sentencia de muerte esa madre.
1983,
Ah,
Henry had only been on the Kipper Run for a week. The following incident would be made into a book and later recreated in the television series.
This is the train the railwaymen call the Flying Kipper.
Can you believe they put it in a kid's story? Of course, that fat
No.
changed quite a few of the facts.
They couldn't know the points from the main line to a siding were frozen, and the home signal should have been set at danger, but snow had forced it down.
As the train approached the most treacherous part of the line, unnoticed to Henry, his driver and
¿cómo que va a morir o qué pedo?
the points
Sentencia
had
de muerte, pues
diverted
lo va a
them to
matar.
the adjoining siding and right into the path of another train.
Ah, va a chocar. Pobre Henry. Se ve más culero que el accidente del...
Henry's driver and
De la
fireman
serie.
had jumped clear before the crash.
In fact, Alan and Barry died from their injuries.
Los pobres
Slowly,
desgraciados.
in snow, the poor bastards.
By midday,
Esta gente
the recovery
tirada.
operation was underway and Sir Topham Hatt had arrived.
Cheer up, Henry, it wasn't your fault. Ice and snow caused the accident.
These images from a train spotter's camera were taken the evening
Ah,
before
fuiste
and
tú,
were successfully
panzón.
covered up by the Sodor Railway Board for 10 years.
There was a railway spike in points, blocking them. Of course, that had disappeared by the time we got there.
I'm sending you to Crewe, a fine place for sick engines.
Crew. We all knew what that meant.
They'll give you a new shape and a larger firebox.
Crewe was, at the time, one of only two
Ah, lo iban a
metal yards
matar ahí.
in the UK capable of handling and recycling organic material as well as engine parts.
You'll feel a different engine and won't need special coal anymore.
With those few words, he'd sentence Henry to death.
Won't that be nice? Yes, sir, said Henry doubtfully.
Everyone knew
Aye.
we won't see him again. And everything was sewn up nice and neat for that fat
Ah, le están desarmando. Pobrecito.
As news got out about Henry's accident, it didn't take long for Thomas to realise Henry had been disposed of because of what he knew.
El
The next
tomates.
evening, Thomas had been put on his own for the night
Está
at Knapford
solito,
Station.
solito.
As his driver and fireman left, under what was left of his own steam, he set off for the Sodor Research Complex. He had a small amount of burning fuel in his firebox, but he was mostly moving under his own strength. It took Thomas 3 hours to get to the complex, the effort to get there nearly killing him. Thomas arrived at midnight. With no one around, he made his way to the shed where he was created. What he found was the answers to his questions.
No,
and many
Thomas,
others.
no vayas.
Since Sodor Research had become producing biofuels vehicles,
Oh,
the
Thomas.
world had asked, why had the first biofusion operation worked so well, but nearly every operation since had failed? Sadly, Thomas found the
A ver,
reasons
por fin,
inside.
nos van a decir la verdad. Vamos a ver por qué. Ah, mira, ahí está un tubo grandote de color verde. De seguro es una lámpara de lava grandota. Ahí va el tomates. A ver qué le va a pasar.
Thomas had never
Thomas
been the
nunca
first
fue-
operation.
Nunca
He
fue la...
hadn't even been second.
¡Nos mintieron! Por eso Thomas nunca fue el número 1. Nah, no es cierto, sí. Thomas ni la segunda.
What shed number 17
Ahí dice
contained
varios intentos.
was evidence
Ah,
of several attempts to create a tank engine with
o
Thomas's
sea que,
DNA.
mira, ahí hay otro esqueleto.
These had been early tests
Ahí está.
made
Ah,
by
mira.
people with no experience of an
Se intent-
experiment on this scale.
Se intentó hacer como varias
Ill-planned
veces.
and unprepared, these procedures had used DNA from the human Thomas and had been as much the real Thomas as the tank engine the world had come to know and love.
Y ya, lo intentaron hacer muchas veces y no lo
To
lograron.
us, Thomas the Tank Engine had been the Thomas we all knew as a boy. Part of the family the whole island's population had known and respected since Wilhelm first arrived.
In actuality, this tank engine was no more the real
Ah,
Thomas than all the failed creations made over the
duró
12 months
un año.
before.
Ah, sí, cierto.
This Thomas had all the human Thomas's memories and experiences. He had learned what Thomas had learned, known who Thomas had known, but so had all the previous
No.
failures.
No, Thomas.
Wilhelm and Hans Goetze had to learn through trial.
Entonces, en realidad es más o menos como un clon del original, por así decirlo. Pues wow, sí que tienen cerebro para inventar.
And error how to bring their Thomas back from the dead. The following experiments had not had the
Pues los
same
otros
work
eran
put into them,
prototipos que no eran,
resulting in the freak
no tenían
engines and
pruebas.
aircraft that had developed so
Por
many
es-
problems on Sodom.
Por eso Thomas no tuvo errores, porque fue, no sé, a lo mejor como Thomas no fue el primero, pues no tuvo fallas ni nada. Porque a lo mejor pudieron hacerlo otra vez y otra vez hasta que saliera bien. Y eso le explica, los demás nomás eran prototipos sin pruebas. Pobres.
Our
Vamos a ver.
island and around the world.
Ya se va a acabar casi.
In Shed 17, Thomas wouldn't discover who he was, but in fact,
Él no es...
who he wasn't.
A ver, en ese tubo, ¿quién está? Ahí va el Thomas, a ver quién... ¿Qué pedo? Ojo, dicen que esta es la parte aterradora, dicen. Así que si son sensibles, por favor, retiren este video y se pongan a ver, no sé, Chahington. No es cierto, es broma. Pueden verlo, pero bajo su prioridad. Para que luego no me pongan en los comentarios, ¡ay, Nextron la locomotora! ¡No pongas eso! Ponle restricción de... Sí, le voy a poner restricción. Nomás no sé. Con mis palabrotas como, su macha, su máquina, su puta... No, esas no sé. Vamos a seguir viendo. Ven que nada me lo tome en serio. Nada me lo tome en serio, cabrón. Bueno, ya. Oh no, ahí está Thomas. No mames. Yo no estoy una llamada perdida de Juanito, me vale ver. Ahorita le contesto al Juanito. Pobre Thomas. Fíjate que es mi primera vez y no me da miedo. Es que yo estoy más o menos acostumbrado al terror.
He had no idea he was only one of the many clones. None of us did. But I guess as time passed, we stopped asking all the questions we had at first. We were just glad our friend was back with us. He could work for us. He became our servant in a way. Someone who drew in the crowds, helped create jobs, was eager to work. Thomas always thought of us as his friends. Sadly, over time we came to think of him as just really useful.
Ya se acabó, ¿verdad? No, todavía falta 4 minutos. En 1983, ¿qué pasó? No entiendo inglés. Bueno, sí sé inglés, pero poquito. Oh, es el Toby de los años, no sé. Cuidado, Toby, no. ¿Con qué chocó, güey? ¿Qué hizo Sir Chopancat? Nada, desapareció. Es lo único que entiendo. Ah, mira, lo quisieron reconstruir. Pero ya para qué, ya está bien muerto el vato. Se prohibió la biofusión en China, todavía se está la biofusión para los presos políticos.
今
Así
日
China.
會有一批水果同蔬菜抵達碼頭嘅。
Ah,
我要你將食物送去納卜集，繼續做你自己日常嘅工作啦。
¡corre! Ahora más rápido que el Sonic ya. ¿Ya se acabó?
Next week, Cockleshell Bay.
Ay, eso
In the
que...
aftermath of the Mr. Ship inquiry, we ask, how much did ITV know? And where next for Robin?
Bueno, eso ya no tiene nada que ver. Bueno, gente, espero que les haya gustado el video. Sí, fue muy largo. Tal vez se suba en un mes esta chingadera. Pero bueno, espero que les haya gustado el video. Yo soy Nextron, la locomotora. Recuerda suscribirte, comentar y compartir el video y darme like para así apoyar a este canal tan humilde. Así que bueno, espero verte pronto y ya nos vemos hasta la próxima. Adiós.